So welcome to what I'm sure is going to be an informative session filled with good ideas for building and growing your own product and company from my very special guest who's been at the bleeding edge of new product launches for quite a few years now. So hey Ryan.
Hey, how's it going?
All good, all good.
Yeah.
So if you're in the audience or if you're streaming the session, you're probably familiar with Product Hunt's discovery platform, which has seen thousands and thousands of products come out and get their 15 minutes of online fame from about 25,000 companies at this point. So one thing you may or may not know is that Product Hunt actually started as an email newsletter about 4 years ago. So Ryan, let's start there. Do you want to tell us how you actually got started and what the landscape of products and product launches was like back in the day?
Yeah, so I'm first curious, who's building a product right now or has launched their own product before? Okay, so looks like maybe a third of the audience. There's more and more people now in the world, it seems, building technology. It's become easier and more accessible to build products today. And for me, I'm actually not an engineer. So this was about 3.5 years ago. I was sort of in between things, and I loved playing with new products, loved discovering new products. And I was like, me and my friends are always sharing these things, but where do I go on the internet to see here's what's new and cool today?
Yeah.
So I started off as an email list because for two reasons. One, I was an engineer, so at the time I couldn't just build a full platform. Yeah. And two, I didn't want to spend weeks building something that I didn't know other people wanted. So I was like, okay, email's great, everyone uses email. It's a simple way to curate things. Let me start with that. Right. And that was the seed of Product Hunt in the very beginning.
Right. And then when did you start to feel like, okay, this is something real. Let's turn it into something bigger?
Prior to the email list, I started writing a lot and doing a lot of analysis on technology and products myself. So when I launched it, I had a few people following me on Twitter and other communities, and that got immediately a couple hundred people subscribed to this email list.
Yeah.
From there, after 2 or 3 weeks, people would email me, or I'd see them in person and say, hey, that product in email is really cool, I like it, it's enjoyable. Yeah. And I was like, oh, some people like this too. And
was this all completely organic?
Yeah, entirely organic,
right.
From the beginning.
Right.
So that was enough validation. Sometimes you don't need a lot, but you just need enough validation to say, okay, there's something here, let's take it one more step further. Yeah. Let's take this email list and turn it into a site and a community.
Right, and then did you get a small team together to build the first iteration of Product Hunt?
So the beginning was interesting, and I think almost unusual, but also typical for many people in building products. It started off as a side project. It was a side project, unincorporated for several months. And when I decided to go to the next step from email list to website, I contacted some friends. One of them was a friend of mine named Nathan Bashaw, and asked him, hey Nathan, I want to build this into something like Reddit in terms of functionality-wise. Yeah. What should I build it in? What should I learn? Because again, I'm not an engineer, so he suggested, he's like, hey, I got time over Thanksgiving, let's work on this together. Oh. And that was just me and Nathan at the time working on it and getting it to something that was usable. Right. Fast forward, the team has grown substantially and had a founding team, went through Y Combinator, and there's a lot of things in between that. But.
Yeah, I mean, so also take us a bit through that journey as well. Like, when did you guys have your MVP, and then how did you feel like, okay, we're comfortable enough to to get a session with Y Combinator, and then start pitching and raising money from heavy hitters like Andreessen Horowitz and Greylock?
So it's at the very beginning, it was all just, here's a side product. I did not call it a startup. I didn't call myself a founder because I felt like it was still an experiment and a project to begin with. And after doing it for several months, having fun, enjoying it, seeing this organic growth, but also working really hard and building an early community. In fact, prior to building the site, we created wireframes, and we shared it with about maybe 30, 40, 50 people in technology, and I would email each person individually and say, here's some really rough mock-ups. Please give us feedback on X, Y, Z. And most people would respond and be like, oh, I like this idea, or maybe you should try this. From the beginning, we were involving a community of people to give us feedback, and that gave us not only feedback on how we can improve the product before it actually launched, but it also got them invested in the creation of the product itself. Right. It was very much community from the very beginning. Even the email list was all community curated.
Right. I think what's probably difficult for some companies and for some products is, when you want that kind of community involvement, they may not immediately see the value even in helping you with feedback. So and I know you wrote before about build your audience first and then build your product. So can you take us a bit through that idea and how founders here can actually apply those concepts to their own projects?
Yeah, so this, again, going back, this is a question that many other people have asked is, okay, well, I have an idea for a product. I want to build it. How do I recruit a team? How do I actually get it out there and get users? I think someone recently emailed me and he said, hey, I have this health-related product and app that I want to build, non-technical founder, and he's like, how do I recruit an engineering co-founder with me? Yeah. It's really hard to do if you're just an idea, but if you can come at it with an audience and a unique insight and unique value, and you can prove out that there's a need for this, then actually recruiting those people is very easy. Right. And so one piece of advice, I guess, for anyone really building a product, whether you're technical or non-technical, in many ways it's how do you build that audience ahead of time, because actually getting users, getting attention, breaking out when there are more and more people, like in this room there's, I don't know, a couple hundred people building products alone. Yeah. Like everyone here is looking for users. The hardest part is actually getting those people. So first, if you can get the attention and build an audience and a brand and some trust and respect within a community of people, doing that first before you actually launch the product is super beneficial. Right. And I don't see enough people doing that ahead of time. They end up building something in isolation, launching it, maybe it's on PRODUCTHUNT, maybe it's through the press on the next web and other places, and you get a spike, but the spike is not going to carry you through. You still need an engaged, sustainable audience to build a meaningful product.
Right. So I believe you did a fair bit of blogging when you were getting started, and that's how you had an audience, and you turned yourself into some sort of authority. So people would be like, okay, Ryan knows what he's talking about. His platform is probably pretty good. So can you just talk a little bit about that sort of hustle where you actually got into a skill that turned into something so beneficial for the beginning of PRODUCTHUNT? Yeah.
So in high school, they made me write book reports for books that I did not enjoy reading. And I hated that. I hated writing at that time. And then somehow I grew older and I started gravitating towards writing about technology and products. And I just enjoyed almost like dissecting, almost for myself, like an introspection of why is this product compelling? Why do I like this? Yeah. And so I wrote a bunch, and I think in 2013 I wrote 150 blog posts. Some of those were published on other publications, been on The Next Web and Fast Company and Pando and some others. That said, I didn't have a major audience, really, but I had enough people following me at the time, and at least a tiny bit of credibility within the tech community that when I did launch PRODUCTHUNT, when it was out there, people were like, okay, I'm going to take a look at this. Right. Versus if you have 0 followers and you have no one that's really in your demographic, let's say, which for me is technology, following, it's really hard to break out and actually get attention for something like that. And when you're building a community-focused product, it's even more important because you're trying to assemble a group of people that are like-minded, that are excited about the same things you're excited about.
Right. And did you always have that idea for PRODUCTHUNT that it needs to be a place where people vote things up and people share their interest in a product, and that's how things get famous?
In many ways, it was somewhat organic. The email list in the beginning was just the very simple idea, and it wasn't fully thought through. To be honest, it was okay. Here, how do I build something simple, and how do I do it from a community direction? And then it just organically and naturally fell into okay. Now we want to turn this email into a website that people can interact with. We know that we want certain functionality like posting. We want people to be able to interact and comment with each other. And we need some mechanism for curation, because if we have 100 things in a reverse chronological list, that's not the most useful way to discover things. So we looked at things like Reddit and Hacker News, and in many ways it's best to actually follow those same design patterns, those same things that other people are familiar with, rather than trying to reinvent an entire new mechanic and try and teach people how to use a new thing. I think I'm now segueing into the interesting conversation piece around like stories and how Facebook is ripping off Snapchat. I think there's valid arguments, I think, on both sides in terms of is it a wise strategy, is it immoral or unethical? In many ways, stories is a very universal format, similar to the newsfeed, which is adopted by, PRODUCTHUNT is a newsfeed to some extent. And in some ways, what Facebook is doing is simply adopting to people's desires and the way that they're learning to use mobile and the way that they want to use mobile.
Right, sure. The other thing that I find very valuable in PRODUCTHUNT definitely is the community, because As a reporter with the Next Web, I get between about 50 and 100 pitches a day. So my email inbox is kind of like a really crappy version of Product Hunt. And there's no one helping me find good stuff. So, what I think is really useful there is a community. And so can you tell us what Product Hunt does to, first of all, get the community's interest and then sustain it over time such that the platform remains extremely useful, whether you've been using it for years or you're brand new to it?
Yeah, so part of the focus is also, when it comes to community building, it all starts with the product itself. And so there's certain things that we, in the very beginning stages, thought a lot about. Is like, one of them is, do we allow anonymous accounts or pseudonyms? Do we allow people to sign up with their email? Initially, it was only Twitter. We used Twitter for two reasons. One, there was identity based around it. We knew that there was a name and a face. We did not allow company accounts. We still don't today. Company accounts to post, because then it feels, who am I talking to? Is this the marketing social media person? Or is this the product manager, the designer, or the marketer of this product? You really want to talk to those people, or the CEO, or the founder. And that was a very distinct decision in the very beginning that has essentially, that going forward sets the course of the tone of the community, is you're talking to the people that make the thing.
I would say that was a stroke of genius, because it definitely differentiates the experience you get when you're talking about the product, or you want to learn more about it, and you actually hear from people who built it and not just people who want to sell it to you.
Exactly, and what we found very organically actually is people would post these things in the very early days, and naturally the makers of these products would be like, oh, people are talking about my thing. I'm looking at my Google Analytics, I'm seeing this traffic from Product Hunt. What is this Product Hunt thing? They come over, they say, oh, I want to answer these questions, I want to engage with this community. So naturally the makers would come on board, and that's what then inspired us to be, okay, well, this is a great place to actually have a Q&A with the makers of these products. Let's annotate and highlight these people. So we have this green M badge to stand for maker. And so you'll see the makers, whether it's the founder or the designer, marketer, whoever it is, person that was instructed in building this product in there answering questions. And we wanted to highlight those people and make that core to the community discussion.
And do you think that there are lessons that you can share, that are kind of universal to any product from your experience of growing the community this way?
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit before, is sometimes it's better to almost, this is almost antithesis to the way people think about using Product Hunt, but in some ways it's better just to build an audience and build a very strong base in the very beginning. Forget about your public launch. Like, you'll have that, you can do that at any time. Sometimes it's more important to actually get a small number of people, iterate on that product, get feedback from them, get them invested in the product, and learn before you do any kind of public launch. Doesn't mean that you can do that pre-launch, you can do that post-launch, but striving for being the top Product Hunt or striving for press is a tactic, not what's going to make your company successful. What is going to make your company successful is making sure you're constantly changing and building something that people want at the end of the day.
Sure. And I know that you helped Nir Eyal write the book Hooked: How to Build High-Performing Products. So for those of us who have not yet read it, what are some key insights that you'd care to share, about building a product that's really sticky and that people will want to use for years to come?
Yeah, so I'll try not to go too long on this, because there's a lot of content in it. It's a great book. Nir, he'd been writing, and he founded a few companies in the past. Then he ended up doing a lot of research and taking all of these really dense papers on psychology and essentially translating into how do you use these learnings, how people think, and apply it to building a technology product. So I ended up actually seeing him yesterday. He was doing a book signing nearby here in Amsterdam and did a talk. And it all kind of comes down to this model that he's created, which is all based around, if you look at most successful social products, they all kind of follow this pattern to some extent, and it starts with a trigger. So let's say, I'll use Product Hunt as one example. We launched something called Ask Product Hunt a couple months ago. It's a way for the community to ask questions, ask for recommendations, like, what's the best calendar app for my iPhone? And then the community can answer those questions. And so the trigger for that is someone asking a question, and maybe it's posted on Twitter. And so you see this tweet, let's say it's from a friend or someone you follow, saying, hey, what's the best calendar app for my iPhone? That's the trigger. Now the action for you is to actually click on that tweet. Ideally, the action is very easy to do. It's not something that requires a lot of effort. And the easier it is, the more people will do it. It's very simple. It's friction, less friction, more engagement. From there, you then have the reward. The reward is what the user is seeking when they click on that. That's the reason why they click on that question. For this case, it could be, oh, I know the perfect calendar app. I want to help my friend. I want to tell them what they should download.
Yeah.
Or it could be, two, I'm curious, what is the best calendar app for my iPhone?
Yeah.
There seems to be all these recommendations over here. That's the reward. And then the fourth part is the investment stage. And this is actually the key thing that a lot of social products sometimes miss. The investment stage is something that the user invests into the product that will bring them back in the future. So in the case of Ask Product Hunt, it could be, oh, I know the perfect calendar app. I'm going to recommend it to my friend. They click on that link. They answer that question. They say, whatever, Google Calendar app.
Yeah.
And then they get pulled back into the service over time as other people either upvote that answer or comment on that answer or give some sort of feedback for that answer being made.
Right.
If you're maybe looking for an answer, you can follow that question and we can notify you when new answers are given. So if you look at a lot of these loops actually exist within Product Hunt on Twitter. Email is the same, actually itself has the same kind of loop. And if you read the book, which I think you should, it's 100 pages or so. It's really quick. I think you'll learn a lot if you're building products. And it can be helpful in almost framing and thinking about, okay, where am I missing in this flow? How am I? How can I build a more engaging product? Is really what it's all about.
Right. And so also let's talk about Product Hunt was sold to AngelList last December.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you take us through how did you know that was the right call? I understand that investor Naval Ravikant was already a huge fan of Product Hunt. Right. So, how did you build on that? How did you maintain your relationship? And then, how do you also keep the Product Hunt experience intact after being acquired?
Yeah, so this was December 1st is when we announced the acquisition. And even going to the beginning days of Product Hunt, before Product Hunt, I used to browse AngelList back in like 2011. And I know that because I ended up searching on Twitter for any mention of AngelList that I tweeted. Because before you make an acquisition announcement, one, you make sure you didn't say anything negative, which I didn't. And two, I was just using it for like internet archaeology. I was just curious, what did I tweet about in the past? And there's a time when I used to browse AngelList to look for products and companies. But AngelList was never built for product discovery. It's historically been a platform for helping companies raise money and helping companies recruit and build a team. And those are huge, giant missions alone.
Right.
So when, fast forward to Product Hunt, Naval ended up investing in both of our C stage and Series A rounds. So we'd built a relationship, known each other for now a while. And then fast forward to late last year, middle last year, started talking more about what we're doing in Product Hunt, what they're doing at AngelList, and the opportunities to come together and help companies recruit, help companies raise money, and for us, help companies get users, help makers get traction. Is very compelling. Those are the three pillars that every single company faces, every single challenge. And so we'll be introducing, don't have anything to share specifically, but we'll be introducing ways that we'll be connecting these two communities together and leveraging each other's data sets in unique ways to ultimately add value to both AngelList and to Product Hunt in unique ways.
Right. And I'm sure you've seen the product landscape from before Product Hunt existed. You've seen it grow over the past nearly 4 years. And what do you think is going to happen with Product Hunt, or how are people going to discover products 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because I feel like Product Hunt is very much a desktop browser experience for nerds. Let's include all of us in that space.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen a little while from now when everyone's used to VR headsets and weirder stuff?
So we, maybe 5 years, we might have, maybe VR will be our primary destination. I don't know. We've half joked about what would VR Product Hunt look like if you could go into basically a techie mall and explore all these products in person. We're not working on that today. It's a little early, but maybe someday. But in the more short term, we're focusing a lot more on helping people find the right products, the best products for their need. Yeah. Historically, Product Hunt has been a place where I've kind of compared it to Christmas. You go there, you open up the website, and hopefully you find really cool stuff that you can try, download, buy, and it's like Christmas. It's like, oh, surprise. That's the goal, at least. And that's historically what we focused on. What we've neglected, or rather not built for today until more recently, is helping people make those decisions, whether it's what's the best calendar app for my iPhone, for example, or Trello was just up here. What's the best task management tool with my team, or project management tool for my team? There's a lot of questions like that everyone has on a daily basis, whether it's a product for your own need, for your team, for a gift. I'm moving into a new home. What smart gadgets do I need for my home? In a world where we have more and more products being created, more and more makers, this challenge, answering that question, becomes more and more difficult. And we're well positioned to answer those questions, especially with the community that we built. And community is a great way to, one, have really authentic, real answers from people that know these products or use these products. And two, it's scalable. We don't have to hire editors and writers for every single category or every single product.
Right.
And so that's the way that we're thinking a lot about Product Hunt is starting to transition not just from this Christmas product experience to, even something that's more of like a product search engine built on a foundation of community curation.
Right. But do you also feel that serendipity might play into, say, a future strategy or some sort of new product update for the platform?
Yeah, we will always have the serendipitous component, absolutely. And I think that's important in particular because we have new products emerging and new products you would never search for.
Yeah.
And people here are building, I'm sure, really cool stuff that people are never going to search for. So how do we help those people get discovered? Especially if it's something new and innovative where a user, especially a mainstream consumer, is never going to search or discover a product that they don't know is out there.
Right.
It's very different than I need a new microwave. What's the best microwave to buy? There's very different use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we've got time for just one quick question, which is, can you tell us about what are the company values for Product Hunt, and how do you ensure that you maintain those so that both the experience for users is the same as they've had for years, as well as the way it is for employees of the company?
Yeah. So when we were going through the acquisition talks, Naval has been first, he really understands our community and our culture. And AngelList does have a different culture to some extent. There's actually a nice Venn diagram of similar values and similar characteristics, but also very different characteristics. And that's important because AngelList historically is very much like a financially focused brand and component. There needs to be less kitten emojis, I think, on AngelList because you're dealing with money and investing. Whereas with Product Hunt, this is our culture. We're very much a kittenish is the word that we use. That means playful.
Yeah.
And that's important because we also don't want Product Hunt to become a sterile place where people are talking about their TAM and their CAC and all these like boring, various acronyms when it comes to like almost like startup pitching. So we want it to be a fun place. We want it to be a place where people can be curious to discover new things. And that culture has maintained. We still operate essentially as an independent team within AngelList. Still all 15 people here on the team. And while we have a lot of opportunities to work together on things, we're not being forced to change in any way. In fact, I think we may, if anything, have infiltrated more emoji use in the AngelList Slack organization, for better or worse.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Ryan.
Thanks, Abby.
Thanks, guys.